as my success started to grow, and it grew, well, I thought super quick. That first year I did make that $10,000. And then the second year was 70,000. And then the third year was like 100,000. And then like 200,000. And it was just unbelievable success. So my confidence started to grow. I started to hang out with more and more online entrepreneurs, people that had digital businesses. And you become who you hang out with. And so my idea of what was possible just grew and grew and grew, because in those early days, I very much thought like there was me, and then there was all these other people knew how to make money. I had that belief that just money comes, money comes. So money just comes to some people. It's easy for some people. I'm not one of those. Some people have success. I self-sabotage. Like I used to have these beliefs, but gradually I weaned myself from those beliefs. And I came to understand that our beliefs are really, they're our destiny. Our beliefs create our destiny.
Hello, Launch family. My name is Chris Saunders, and I am so excited to have you listening to our conversation today. As usual, I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Jeff Walker.
Hey, Chris. Looking forward to this.
Looking forward to this too. And unusually, I'm actually joined by nobody else today. We usually will have guests on this podcast, but we wanted to do a podcast with just you and me today, right, Jeff? Just to be able to kind of establish and talk through, I think, a little bit about what this podcast is and what it's going to be. And I thought it'd be really exciting to also just maybe for people who are new to who you are in our world, to hear a little bit more about who you are and this world that we're in, this launch world that we're in. I guess I wanted to start with that idea of just like, well, if you're the first time listener listening to us, who the heck are we, and why should they be listening to this podcast?
Good question. There's a million there are literally a million podcasts out there.
Yeah. Lots of people out there doing this speaking into the mic thing.
It's going to be interesting. So for those of you who are new to my world, new to our world, I've been in business online since 1996. And I spent about 8 years building a training business where I was teaching people about the stock market. And then in 2005, after I built up some chops around marketing and built up a real passion for marketing and entrepreneurship and teaching people and coaching people around that, I came out with a product called Product Launch Formula, which taught people how to launch their online courses, membership sites, programs, coaching, masterminds, whatever. And that Product Launch Formula, 2005, it first came out, and it's been continually updated. It's the longest running training in online entrepreneurship there is in existence, period, full stop. I've sold over $100 million of it over the years of Product Launch Formula and ancillary products. And more important, my students have done $1 billion in sales since then in every market, every niche, every language, every country you can imagine. So I've got a little bit of experience in this online business, and we've built up a sizable team. Chris has been part of this team with me for a long time. Chris, how long has it been now?
I was trying to figure this out actually earlier, and I think I actually started just over 7 years ago. It's been 7 years and a bit. I know it's hard to believe it's been 7 years now that I've been on this team, especially just like the way I came into this team, having been like, I heard about you on a podcast weirdly, right? And got your book. And that's how I wound up stumbled into this weird launch world, right?
Yeah. And that was like the Tim Ferriss podcast that you heard about?
It was. Yeah. I heard about one of your Platinum Mastermind people, actually, Susan Garrett. And she was on there talking about her dog agility training as an expert in that area. And what was so interesting is I don't even own a dog. I was just interested in like trying to learn things and get better, because I was running my own business at the time. It was very much it was a sales and recruiting business where I was actually selling knives, high-end kitchen cutlery called Cutco, but I was a recruiter. And during that podcast, she mentioned this book called Launch. And then Tim Ferriss was like, oh yeah, Launch. That's like the best book you could ever read on launching products online. And she's like, yeah, it is. Jeff's an amazing guy. And it's really helped me in all these different ways. And I was like, maybe I'll just pick up that book. I don't have a dog. This could be the valuable piece of information from this podcast. And so I picked up the book and wound up, of course, getting on your list, and then through various other things, eventually getting onto your team, just because I went down this rabbit hole of launch world, which I think a lot of people, if they start off with this podcast, they might find themselves going down a rabbit hole of what this launch world really is. Because it was my first exposure ever to the idea of like really online marketing, digital marketing, and launching things online, which I realized when I read your book and when I actually got into this, that you had been doing this longer than almost anyone else out there as far as like digital marketers that I heard of. And I'll just say as well, like when I thought about like who you were in terms of the business, I was like, pioneer came into my mind as far as like a person. And I know you love talking about yourself. This is the opposite of Jeff. He's so very humble. He never really talks about like how awesome and how much he has done, but really, the fact that you had been doing this for a lot longer than I'd seen anybody else. And then I started to see like the names you had worked with, and you'd been adjacent to a lot of really big people. Like I had heard you work with Tony Robbins, and you had worked with Russell Brunson. That was where I really started to take notice. I was like, oh, this guy's amazing. Like, this is really crazy. And I really started to pay attention to what you were doing in your emails and your blogs and all that sort of thing. And yeah, eventually got on the team, which was kind of cool.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's been 7 years. 7 years. Yeah.
7. Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things I'm so proud of is our team and the longevity on our team. The first person I ever hired, Betty, many those, many of the people that are of my world that know us have now familiar with Betty, but she was customer service, and or she still is customer service. She's like one of our amazing customer service people and has led that team. And I think I'm going to say 2006 when she started with me. It's the longevity is crazy. So yeah, I have gotten a ringside seat to this entire industry, to the birth of this industry. Along the way, I've been in the ring as well. So I just haven't been watching, but it's been a crazy path. Crazy.
It is. Well, and the longevity not only the longevity just on our team, because when I joined, our team was smaller. Our team has grown since then, I remember. And I remember when I met Betty too, and she was like the first person who was your first hire and that whole story. But I remember my first event that I ever went to, actually, right when I joined, was one of your Plat Plus masterminds. I hadn't officially joined the team yet, but I showed up, and I remember going into that room and you mentioning and saying that like there were people who were in your Plat Plus mastermind since it began. Like, how long has that been going on too? Because that's like you still have people who have been there since the very beginning, which is crazy.
We do. We're in our 13th year. We've had 38 meetings because we meet 3 times a year. We've had 38 meetings, and approximately half the people that joined 13 years ago are still in that group.
That's so crazy. Like that must be unheard of in the industry, right? Like I've not heard of too many places where anyone sticks it out for that amount of time.
It's I think it's unheard of.
Yeah.
It just literally is just doesn't. I mean, I don't think there are any masterminds around that have been around for 13 years, and I don't think I don't think there's any that have had people in them for 13 years. It's in like Ruth at our last meeting, because you get together with people you've been with for so long, and the stories that have happened in that group are crazy, and there's a whole lore and legend to it. But yeah, like Ruth was saying, I haven't missed a meeting. 38 meetings I've been to. So it's like, that's amazing. So I mean, yeah. So if you're just joining us, we're talking about, we're going to be talking about online marketing. We're going to be talking about online business, digital business. We're going to be talking about entrepreneurship, about being able to start and grow your business. I know we're going to, because we have people in our community that have been following us and been with us for a decade or more. We've got a lot of people with very sizable businesses now because you stick at it and you grow things. So we're going to be going deep into all things entrepreneurship, all the highs and the lows, the challenges, the ways to grow your business, the way to deal with the growth, the way and also be able to have a great life. Mm-hmm. This is one thing to build a great business. It's another thing to build a great business and also have a great life. So I'm all about having you win both personally and professionally, in your relationships, in your health, in every way. So that's all on the table.
That super attracted me to working with you. Actually, back when I was looking at this, was the fact that it was I always felt like you were lifestyle driven. It wasn't necessarily like, okay, I need to make the biggest possible amount of money in order to be able to buy the fanciest cars and the fanciest houses and the best. Like, that just wasn't the vibe that I got from you or the people that were in your network. It was so much more about building what I remember you kind of coined the frame launch life, which was this idea of a lifestyle that you have built for yourself. And the way I've described it now, since I talk about it in some of our sales calls and things like that, because that's kind of where my role was in sales. But I talk to people about building the house that they want to live in. Because I think that sometimes, especially entrepreneurs, especially when they're starting off, can sometimes get wrapped up in the idea of like chasing something that maybe they don't actually want down the road, or they get trapped inside of their business. And I'll say that, like, for myself, running my own business through my 20s, I definitely felt like I experienced that, where I was excited about, the big sales contests and the big sales trips and all of the effort that I got to put in there. But I was also just completely trapped in that cycle of running my business day to day, working 6 or 7 days a week in some times of year, many, many hours to be able to make this thing thrive and grow. And when I saw what you were doing, I was like, well, there's a different way of doing this. Like, you don't have to, if you're an entrepreneur, you don't have to build this business where you are trapped in it day after day after day after day.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Boy, I feel like we could do an entire season just on this topic. There's this idea of, hustling and grinding and this whole hustle culture and how it's celebrated and venerated. And, I think like Gary Vaynerchuk is sort of the poster child for that. Like in terms of what he puts out there
or something. Yeah.
And then like Dan Martell, who's in Plat Plus. Dan Martell's an amazing person, and you watch his Insta stories and he's like, get after it. But one of the things that I love about Dan Martell is like, he's got an amazing business and he's growing his business. And if you read between the lines and watch real carefully, you actually don't have to watch very carefully at all. He is all about, being in great physical health and getting outside and exercising and beyond exercising, getting out and having bike rides and having hikes and having fun. And he's all about his relationship to his wife and his kids. And so like, he is all about 100% getting after it, but getting after it in every area of your life, not just work. And this is a topic we can talk about this for a long time, and I would love to.
Probably will throughout the whole podcast. You're going to see that show up probably with all of our guests and stuff as well.
100%.
Because so many of them, I think, exemplify what you're talking about. Is that they've built businesses where they thrive. They have big businesses, millions and millions, like large successful businesses, and almost every industry possible you could think of. I think you've had people launch products in, but it's the opportunity to build something where they really love their life. And they because when we get together with the people at masterminds, it's rare that they're talking about this, they do talk business, but so much of what they're excited and celebrating are these, personal wins in sort of family life or in creating lifestyle, or these lifestyle milestones that they've been wanting to achieve that I think it really showcases that you're not getting trapped into this hustle culture when you go down this launch life path.
Right, 100%. And I also want to honor. I mean, there are times where you do hustle and where you do grind, and where there's, if you're going to build something cool, I mean, there's work involved, and I'm super clear with all our students. I mean, there's work involved, and there, trust me, Chris, there are times where in the early days where I was working really, really hard. But you always have to, like, the phrase I like to think of is like, play the game that you want to win. So if you're going to be creating something in the world, if you're going to be creating a business, then you literally are creating it. You're creating from the ether. You might not know, well, you absolutely do not know what it will look like in the end. I couldn't have imagined this that I'd be talking to you, that I'd be on camera, that we'd be doing podcasts. Didn't exist back then. I couldn't have imagined, the things that I've done back then. So things will look different eventually, but you always have to be asking yourself, especially once you achieve a certain level of success, is like, am I building the life that I want to build? And so, yeah, if you're creating something, you're basically creating your own game to play. So make sure it's a game that you want to win, and that it's just not grind. And then you wake up 20 years from now and your relationships are shattered and you've got horrible health and you don't have any identity outside of this business that you've built. So I love entrepreneurship. I love being able to create. I love being able to serve and help people. I love being able to serve and help people who are serving and helping other people. That's all amazing. But, if I don't have the home life, if I don't have the relationship with my wife, if I don't have the relationship with my kids, if I'm not physically strong, if I'm not, spiritually have it together, if I mentally have it together, it's all for naught. So, yeah, there's times to hustle, but there's times to step back and say, is this really serving me?
I think that there's so much in what you just said about, about your life. And I think it's a great opportunity for people to maybe hear where it is that you got started, because you weren't always an entrepreneur, right? Like, how did you really get into this entrepreneur online marketing world from getting started?
Well, this is one of those crazy stories, but the single word answer was desperation. Back in the 90s, I found myself as a stay-at-home dad taking care of two toddlers. My wife was supporting the family. Big long story on how that happened. But basically, I was a corporate failure. I had a good corporate job and then another good corporate job, and I just didn't get what was going on. I didn't understand the office politics. I didn't understand the corporate culture. And I basically flunked out. I quit right before they would have fired me. And so then I'm home with first my 1-year-old son, and then a few years later, my daughter, and I'm taking care of these toddlers. And then one day my wife helped me realize that we were barely making ends meet. We were the four of us being supported by my wife and her single salary and very little money to go around. In fact, I put together a budget and my disposable income. So in other words, the money you have left over after you pay rent and for food, the disposable income that we had for an entire year. So our spending money was $400 per year. And so times were tight, and I'm like, I need to figure out some way to make money. The only problem is I'd been at home taking care of a couple small children for about 4 or 5, 6 years at that time. Back in the 90s,
resume, does it?
No. And back in the 90s, in the early 90s, men did not do such things. And the huge hole in the resume. So I came with this idea, well, I'm going to go back to graduate school, or I'm going to go to graduate school, get a degree, and then maybe that'll look good on the resume. And then I can get back into that corporate world where I had failed in the first place. So my thinking was the level of—
You had a perfect plan.
Yeah, perfect plan. I failed, so I'm going to spend 2 years and a lot of money, get another degree so I can go fail again.
But how many people do that though? They sometimes they have a struggle, and they're like, this is where I'll go do this thing but they don't want that thing. They're not even working towards the thing they want.
I grew up, there were no business owners, there were no entrepreneurs in my family. My dad worked for one company for 40 years and then retired. My father-in-law worked for a company for 45 years and retired. Everyone I knew just got a job and stayed in that job. I mean, that's the way the world used to be. It's not like that anymore, thankfully, but
Yeah.
that's the way it used to be. And that was my pattern. And that was the pattern that was imprinted on me. So I was like, it was already way out of pattern to quit to quit that job and then stay home with the kids. That was all really weird. But I had no picture of success, and my picture of success was, okay, I'm going to go back and work for a company, and it was messed up. It was so messed up. So, anyways, I'm like, I'm going to try to get back to grad school, but you need a resume to get into graduate school. I mean, you can't
Right.
just so. And the resume I had was 5 years of staying home with a couple of kids and making peanut butter sandwiches, and so I thought, if I came up with this master plan. This is the master plan: was I'm going to start publishing an email newsletter about the stock market, because I had a lot of interest in the stock market. I'd studied the stock market. I had no credentials, but I'd put a lot of time into studying. I'm going to start a newsletter about the stock market, and I'm going to publish it via email, and I'm going to do it for free because you can send an email for free.
Hmm.
And then I would put on my resume for graduate school that I was a publisher of a newsletter, a stock market newsletter. And I wouldn't put on my resume that it was free, and I wouldn't put on the resume that it was email, because this is 1996.
Right. That
And
looks good, right? People
yeah,
always doctor up their resume. This is a really clever way to doctor up your
this
resume,
was
right?
me. Yeah, going full, going
Yeah.
full send on doctoring the resume. It was going to be
Love that.
100% truthful. I just leave out a couple of details.
Yeah, of course.
And so I started publishing that newsletter, and the first one went out to everyone I knew who had an email address. That was like 17 people. I put my second email address and my wife's email address on the distribution list, so it had 19 emails. I needed to feel better about myself. I guess I didn't have much going on. I mean, I had a lovely family, I had a couple of great kids, I had an amazing wife, we had a good marriage, but not too much else going on in my life. So it felt better to say I had 19 subscribers.
Yeah. 19
That
is better than 17. So,
Oh, it's a lot. It's like 20% better. It's
yeah.
like,
Little
yeah,
jumps like that make
or
a huge
10,
difference.
yeah, 15, whatever. So, so the distribution for that newsletter started to grow by word of mouth. People, I guess, were getting value. And so the next newsletter I had 23 people, and then 29 people, and then 40 people. And it started to grow and grow and grow. And I don't know, within 3 or 4 or 5 months, I was up to, like, I don't know, 500, 600 people were getting this thing. I was on top of the world. I still had not spent a single cent, not one penny. I was still just sending out these emails with blind carbon copy and sending it out to everyone, and twice a month. And I did put it on my resume for grad school.
Hmm.
I did get into grad school, which was amazing. So then what's my next problem? My next problem is, like, this is going to be in January of 97, and I'm going to start grad school. And you know what comes along with grad school is tuition to grad school.
Ooh,
And
yeah.
I'm like, okay, now I got to figure out how we're going to pay for this. And I thought by then I had, I don't know what it was. It may have been 1,000 people on that distribution list. I'm like, maybe they'll buy something from me. And at that point, I had never sold anything in my life that I had created. In fact, the only thing, Chris, since you have this experience in selling,
Yeah.
you have this vast experience with selling. Like, I was like, I couldn't sell anything. Like, when I was a kid in the Boy Scouts, we would do a fundraiser where you just sell bags of donuts for $1. And, the idea was you go door to door and sell bags of donuts. You're like a 11-year-old kid. How hard is it to sell donuts? Like, really?
Most of them are bought, not sold, right? Like that's what we
Exactly.
always said. Yeah.
Exactly. So I sold one bag of donuts to my parents, and I sold one bag of donuts to my next door neighbor, who was this very nice elderly woman who was really always sweet to me. So I sold 2 bags. That's all I could sell.
Mhm.
Anyways, I thought maybe I could sell some to these folks. For the next problem is I don't know how to sell. Online commerce. This is late 96, early 97. Online commerce wasn't taking online payments was really hard back then. People
Mhm.
didn't trust buying online back then. And I didn't, like, what could I sell? So I came up with this idea to create like an upgraded version of this newsletter that I've been publishing. And then my next problem was these people would write back to me, my subscribers that felt like they loved me. They really cared about me. And now I was going to ask them for money. So now they're going to hate me. Just messed up thinking, messed up
Yeah.
thinking.
That's a
And
really common thing for people, though, when they're in that moment before you ever charge for that first product. Like I did a lot of sales, but I'll tell you, the very first time you have to ask people to buy, like that, I still remember it back going through my sales training and them saying, like, hey, you got to go home and ask people for an appointment. And then your first demonstration that you go out and do, you have to ask for the order. Because if you don't ask, you don't get, right? And it's I mean, I did this at I think 19 or something. So, everything's a little nerve wracking at 19. But then the actual like sitting down with someone from across the table, going through a whole presentation, and then just being like, we used to do it this way. We'd say, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask you. Would you like to go ahead with this purchase today? And it was like a way to soften that blow of asking for the order. And I don't know if you could do that as an entrepreneur, right? Like they gave us a little out that way, but I'm like, how did you jump into that idea of, okay, I'm going to ask people to actually pay for something online?
well, Chris, I mean, now what I know is that any transaction is a value exchange. So, if you're going to ask for the sale, they're unless you're going to deliver value, they're going to say no. And if you are going to deliver value, then they're just trading their money for that value. And I know that now. I didn't know that then. So my solution was sort of like that. I wouldn't be doing my job. I'm like, how can I amp up the value? So I started delivering a whole bunch of extra value leading into what we now call launch.
Mm.
And so I put out, and back then we didn't have video. Online video didn't exist. Online audio didn't exist. Blogs didn't exist. Social media didn't exist. Putting photos online didn't exist. So this was early days. So I basically created several reports and I sent them out via email, like of just basically it was a romance process. It was a way of delivering even more value that led into the sale. And the crazy thing is there's a few crazy things. First, it actually worked. I made some sales. We can talk about that in a second, but this was the genesis of the idea of a launch, of delivering value ahead of time and value that leads into the sale. So I was literally doing this in December of 1996. By accident, because I was scared to ask for the sale. I'm going to romance these folks. I'm going to make them fall even more in love with me, so much so that they'll give me money. Mm-hmm. And it was like early January, and I sent out a thing that said, hey, it was basically a sales letter. It was all done via email. It's like, I've been giving you this free thing. I'm going to keep on giving you the free thing. But if you want this even more valuable thing, then I'm going to start publishing that and print out this form, write a check and send it to me.
Wait. You had people mail you checks back in the day. That's crazy.
because I had no tech experience.
Yeah.
Taking online payments was like rocket science back then. Yeah. And so some people actually did. I still remember that. I went to check my email the morning after I sent out that sales letter. I sent it out. I went to bed, and I woke up, and there was an email from someone that said, I'm in." And the one thing I did right, well, I guess I did a lot of things right back then, but one of the things I did right was that I charged a high price. It was $700 for a year or $225 per quarter. Horrible pricing. Like what I know now. It was like really, really bad pricing, but that's what it was. Because
Did you just pick that number because it was like, I guess this would be great if someone said yes.
100%, just completely random, and so this guy wrote back, and he was from Switzerland, and I'm just like sitting there in my little. I'm here in Colorado. I'm in my little, it was the baby's changing room. It's like, there's the diaper pail over there, and I got my computer set up here, and someone wrote in and said, I'm going to send you a check for $700. I'm putting it in the mail right now. And he's in Switzerland. And I'm like, I've never talked to anyone in my life in Switzerland. It was a smaller world back then. I just was blown away. And I mean, I just jumped. I jumped so high. It was just unbelievable to me that the fact that someone would pay me money for something that I created, it was just unreal. And so that launch went on to make $1,650. And, everyone's got a different, and that's pretty much all profit because the product was sending emails. I'd be sending emails for the next year, but just sending emails.
And you hadn't spent any money on it up until that point. You said you were at $0 investment, just time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think right at that time, I went and I went to mailboxes like USA or whatever to get a PO box. So that was the first money I spent. I think it was like $30 or $40. So at that point, I did have about $30, $40 into this to get like just someplace where they could send checks to, so they weren't sent it to my home address.
But to have like $400 of extra spending money for the whole year in your budget, and then for you to pull in $1,600, 4 times that in one. I guess you wouldn't even call it a launch at the time, but just like this sales campaign that you put out, that must have been sort of game changing for you in some way.
It was, everyone's got a different frame of reference for money. For some people, that's a crazy amount of money. For some people, it's like, whatever. I barely walk across the street for that. For me, it was crazy life changing because I did have this thought, like we talked about how my mental process at that point had some challenges with my thinking. But one thing I did think was, if I did that once, I can do it again, and I can do it again and again, and I might even get better at it at some point. And so that's what happened.
And you did, yeah. You got a little better at it.
I did get better at it. And then, Chris, this is something, I haven't told this story very many times, but that so $1,650, amazing. I'm sky high. And then classes were starting because I had applied to school and I'd gotten to school, and it's early January, so classes are starting. So I went to my first class. And so this is a graduate finance level class. So we're studying finance, and I'm in there.
Plan. Go to school, right?
Go to school, get that degree, get a finance degree, be able to go be a financial analyst or something like that. And so I'm sitting there in that first class, and the teacher's talking, blah, 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 blah. And I'm looking around, and I'm like 10 years older than everyone else in the class. I'm like 35 or something. All the other people are like, 25. And I'm looking around at them, and a lot of them have just come from work. They're in suits and stuff because it's in the evening. I'm still taking care of a couple of kids. So I'm taking care of kids all day, going to school in the evening. And in that first class, teacher's just going on and on about this finance stuff, which, I had some level of interest in, but still wasn't as cool as $1,650. So I'm just sitting there, and she's going on and on and on. And Chris, I think you know this about me. I'm not like a brash person. I tend to think things through and take my time making decisions. But in the middle of that class, I got up and I walked out. I'm like, I'm done. This is not my future. I see my future, and it is not going to school. And, if you look at how hard I worked to get into that class, how I'd spent 6 months of publishing a newsletter, I'd done all this work to get in there. I'd taken the GMAT test. I'd studied for the tests, all that work to get there. And it was so crystal clear that I have a future. And that future is, I don't know, I'm not yet calling this thing a business that I'm building, but there is something here, and that's my future. And it's not going to school, and it's not getting a finance degree, and it's not going to work for some big financial company. And that was just this moment of clarity. And that moment made all the difference.
Was the walk home okay, so the walk home, I'm assuming you're walking home, but like on the way home from that class, was there a sense of relief? Was it excitement? Was it like what was that like in that moment? Because I can imagine it's probably like to walk out of this thing, you just spent a bunch of time trying to, like, your plan went out the window, right?
Right. It did.
So that could be anxiety inducing to some
so
people.
Chris,
What's it relief?
actually, you know what was going through my head was, what the hell am I going to tell my wife, Mary?
Of course, right.
I'm going to walk in that door a little bit early, and I'm not going back to school. And part of this whole thing was this plan for, me to try to relieve the pressure from the family by going down this path. And I just made this snap decision. And like, what am I going to tell her? And so I got home, and I'm like, I just told her, I said, you know what we just did last week. And I don't know where that's going, but that's going someplace. And it's going there a lot faster than going to school for 2 years and then going and getting a job I hate.
And good news is no tuition now, right?
Yeah, no tuition. And the amazing
just cut expenses.
Right. Yeah. And what's amazing is that Mary she supported me 100%. And she always has, and she bought into my vision then, and she has continued to buy into my vision, and it's worked out really well. But I'm so blessed by that, because I do know, I'm in the business of helping people either start or grow their businesses. That's the business that we're in, that the whole team's in. And what I do know is that a lot of people struggle with the people in their lives are not supporting them. They have friends that they think the idea of building a business is just either ridiculous or for magical people or a scam, or they have a partner, a spouse, or some other type of partner who just like they may not support such crazy ideas as, I'm going to go build a business. And so
they may not have the examples, like you didn't have the examples, right? Yeah. Like you even said, I didn't have, like, I'm kind of like, both my parents are in sales. Both of them were somewhat entrepreneurial. Like my mom started an arts and crafts store when she was 21. My dad has always been entrepreneurial. Like I kind of had these examples of people. So when I got a sales job, they weren't negging me out like a lot of parents are,
right.
Or were. And we used to have that all the time. Whenever I recruited salespeople, if they didn't have examples in their life of somebody who had been successful in sales or successful in entrepreneurship and business, often their parents would just tell them, well, that's not going to work. You're not going to do well, or this isn't for you. That's just not the style of business. And if you don't have those examples in your life or the support network, it is just so much harder to find success in something like this, which I guess is part of, why we want to do a podcast like this is you're going to hear stories of people like Jeff, but also a lot of other stories of people who you might relate to, who maybe didn't have that support network, and ideally can inspire our listeners to step into a bigger future for themselves like that,
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yeah. That is so cool. I didn't know that part about just the walking out of the classroom. That's such a powerful moment. I think that how different life would be if you hadn't, and for how many people in the world would life be different if you had just said, you know what, I'm going to stick to my plan instead of being willing to shift and move.
Right. Chris, one of the things is like a lot of folks come into our world and they're like, they sort of fall into two camps, and they're like, I want to make some money, and I need an income, or I want that lifestyle, or I want that freedom, that time and money freedom. And there's a whole different camp that's like, I just want to save the world. I have this message, I have this skill that I want to share with people. The world needs this. You mentioned earlier Susan Garrett with the dog training. Well, Susan's her goal is just to make all dogs' lives better and all dogs' owners' lives better in the whole entire world. Yeah. So we have this sort of almost a dichotomy amongst our people, amongst our followers, our students of save the world or make $1 million. And like right now, my life, things have gone well. Things have gone very, very well for me. And have a level of income and lifestyle that I never could have imagined. And really my business for me it's become about impact. I hit every goal I set. Like when I first started this business, one of the things I did was I set all these goals, big goals, and I hit all of those goals. And it's been over a decade since I hit all of those goals. And now the thing that drives me is making an impact. It's making an impact and helping people. It's supporting my team and having a great team. It's about having these great communities, but it's all about service, which is not, it's about serving. And I know I say that, and a lot of people will be listening, and that might resonate with them. But I have a soft spot for all the people that are like, I want to make some money. I want to have that freedom. I want that because I was there. I was 100%. I didn't start this business to serve people. Yeah, we helped people. I definitely served them. I helped them a lot with their investments and their trading. But that was a byproduct. The goal was I need to make some money to relieve the pressure on my family. Mm-hmm. And so for everyone listening, if you are just like, hey, I want to show me how to make the money. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I'm all about that because I know that it's hard to save the world and make your impact if you don't have a budget. And making sales is what gives you that budget. It's about building business, and business is about making sales, making money, and then you can serve in any way you want.
Yeah. I think that's so important for people to realize because like where you're starting is such a relatable place for people, especially right now in the times that we're in. I think a lot of people are more and more feeling that financial desperation that you talked about in your story. And so stepping into the idea of entrepreneurship when you're already in a sort of scary, desperate place, it's a risk, right? And having the right tactics, the right strategies, the ways in which to do it, and also the people to inspire you to move down that path. I think that's super important. That's super important for people to be hearing right now, any other time. And what I also think is at least what resonated a lot for me about you and your story, and also one of the reasons I decided to want to work with you too, is because I had been in my company for 13 years, almost 14 years before I decided to kind of jump over to work with you. And that was a big decision for me to move away from some place where I had quite a bit of success. I did say I was a little trapped by my opportunity a bit, but it was also, they had been really great to me. And to step away into a place where I didn't say this in my resume, but I had no experience in digital marketing. Like I knew how to sell stuff, but I didn't really understand this world at the level that I do now, having been in it for a while and being on the inside of your team. What really resonated to me was that you hadn't, I think, changed who you were. Like you mentioned going to that class where everyone's in a suit, and I'm just imagining you in a t-shirt or something like the way you are right now, showing up there. And, I remember going through some of your blog videos at the time, and you had this one video where it was an apology video to Ron, because Ron he had made a comment on a previous video that like, he's not in a suit, this is ridiculous. Or he had said something about the fact that what he's, it's totally distracting that you weren't wearing a suit. And you had this amazing apology video where you kind of played off that you were going to attract people who wanted to be like you and that were lifestyle driven and didn't want to wear the suit to work every day and wanted to be comfortable and be themselves while still also finding success and creating impact in the world. And to me, that was really resonant at that time, because I had worn a suit every single day for the last like 13 years, and I was in that moment for me where I was like, it was a big deal when I decided to stop wearing a tie. I remember my managers were like, you got to wear a tie when you're running an interview. I'm like, I don't think you do. I mean, we're recruiting students. I don't think you actually have to wear a tie. It's my office, right? And I remember having these back and forths with people about like, is it my office or is it your, like, it's my, and I think a lot of people, once they realize when you were when you relaxed a little bit and came across more authentic, I actually had all of my numbers go up. And I had better people show up, people who wanted to be, because what I would say is people showed up to our interviews and our training and all that sort of thing because they wanted to be like me or like the person who was running the office in some way. And what I saw when I, was going through your blogs and through the book and everything like that was that you had a life that was like, okay, that's the lifestyle I would want. And I think you've always exemplified that. And it really is a powerful thing for people to see someone who isn't just that typical wear a suit, hustle every single day, work. Like it's just, you had a different vibe than anyone else I had seen doing this stuff online. And that really, really resonated with me. And I think, people need that.
Yeah, and and to be clear, if someone like really enjoys wearing a suit,
It's still fun sometimes to dress up.
I mean, yeah, I mean, my wife loves seeing me in a suit. Maybe every now and then, like at a wedding, I actually do own a suit. So she just likes the way I look in a suit. So unfortunately for her, I don't get in it for, so yeah, if you want to wear it, go for it. But like, so Chris, this is the thing is like when I first started publishing that newsletter in the 90s, I was publishing about the stock market. And I had no credentials. I wasn't a stockbroker. I wasn't a registered investment advisor. I wasn't a commodity trading advisor. No initials after my name. No credentials. I had just studied. And I had spent a lot of time studying the market. So I knew a little bit about it, but no credentials. And I'm in an industry that likes credentials. But what I realized early on is people, when I sent out that newsletter, it was just me writing to them as a person, not trying to appear like Morgan Stanley or some big company. And for some reason that resonated with people. And I realized that it resonated with people. So right from early on, I'm like, I think the way I can compete is not by having more initials, because I don't have those initials after my name. And it's not by having a big fancy office, and it's not by having a big fancy company behind me. I can't compete on any of those, but I can compete on connection. And so early on, I realized that some people resonated with me and some people didn't, which is fine. But that has made all the difference, because that's the world we live in more than ever, is that people appreciate dealing with real humans, and they love, the word authenticity is used a lot, and it's sort of a weird word. Maybe at some point we can talk about that, because I do, on one level, I like it. I also think of like transparency as another word that I really like, but I mean, like, connection is one of my highest values, and for whatever reason, some people, not everyone, probably for a small percentage, but some percentage of people resonate with me, and they resonate with the way I communicate and how I speak. And so I endeavor to write as I speak. I endeavor to my videos to be really literally me saying my words the way I would say them if we were just hanging out. And it's worked for me. And I think it's not just me. I think that's the way you win in business these days. Unless you've got some big funded company where you got all kinds of venture capital behind you and you're trying to build something faceless. And that's all great, but that's not the business, the people that I tend to coach. So yeah, for some reason I stumbled onto that early, and it's like, so I'm sure as hell not going to be putting on a suit, especially like when I started teaching people how to grow businesses. I didn't have any suits to wear, and so I wasn't going to be putting on suits. I wasn't going to be putting on ties, but also I understood that the people I'm reaching, the thing they want to do is stop wearing the suit. They don't want to wear the suit. They want to be at home. And so, it just became clear to me I should like model what my people want. And by the way, it's also how I live.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to flash forward a little bit in your story because you live in Durango, right? Colorado. And one thing that I know you've always talked about is just how much you love where you are. You've found a place that I think in the world I think I've heard you say that this is like the one place in the world you want to live in. And I'm curious, like, how did you wind up in Durango, and how did that story actually come to be? How did you wind up to the place you really want to live?
Yeah, when I grew up in Michigan, and never been west ever in my life, never seen mountains.
Mm.
But for some reason the West just called to me. It was this call to my soul. And really like the desert and called to me and the mountains called to me. And so when I got out of college, I moved west I was recruited to a job in the Phoenix area. And I moved there and I just absolutely fell in love with the West. I fell in love with the desert. But on the drive from Michigan to Phoenix, I was just took 5 days. It's like over 2,000 miles. So it took 5 days to drive out. And, for those of you who know the United States, I spent like 2 or 3 days crossing the prairies, crossing Nebraska and Iowa and eastern Colorado. And then eventually got to Colorado Springs. And it's like, oh, here's the mountains. And, the Colorado Springs, it's just a beautiful place. And then I got in my car the next day and I just followed, this is back before Google Maps, before GPS. I'm look at the map and there's a map and it's like direct line between Colorado Springs and Phoenix was, this highway 285. And I got on that and drove until the end of the day. And at the end of the day, I was in this town called Durango, Colorado. And I was just instantly fell in love with it. And just completely enamored. It's just it's a small town. It's super cool. The people are super cool. It's got amazing mountains to the north. It's got amazing deserts to the south and to the west. And it just fell in love with it. I remember calling my parents, and back then, calling home from a hotel was like $1 a minute kind of thing. There were no cell phones, but calling my parents and just going on and on about this place called Durango. And my dad said to me, wow, it sounds like you just want to stop there and not even go any further. And when he said that to me, I was like, well, yeah. And it'd be nice to go to the moon too, but like regular people don't do such things. And, regular people don't live in towns like this. Where would you work? There's no big companies here. And
you were still a regular person.
Yeah, regular people, just, normal folks don't live in places like this. So then I got in the car and drove the next day to Phoenix and started my corporate career. But like I never forgot Durango. And then when it got to the point where, I started the business, and what we didn't talk about was within about a year and a half or 2 years, my wife was able to quit her job, come home and help me grow the business. And at that point, we were location independent. We could live anywhere we wanted. And
that was a concept that didn't even really exist, right? Like at the time, I mean, the idea of working from home is very common now, or working wherever you want. That's like what a lot of people do. But
right. Or having a virtual team. Having virtual,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I remember people coming to me being like, how have you been doing this virtual thing for so long? And I'm like, I've been doing it before it was cool. Like a lot of people didn't really get it. But the idea of just being location independent at the time, because it was must have been
2000.
Like, just a totally different concept. The idea that you could live and work wherever you wanted, as long as you had an internet connection. That's wow.
That was nuts. Yeah.
And so I love how you just like the regular person versus, I was like, maybe we call this irregular entrepreneur, because we're kind of, you're kind of the irregular entrepreneur. That's been your story through the whole thing.
Yeah. It's funny, Chris, because like over time, as I started to grow my business and my confidence started to grow, and then I started hanging out with entrepreneurs. This is one of the things early, when I first started that business, one of the things I was obsessive about was like reaching out to other people I saw that were like publishing online, that had some type of an online presence. Even if they didn't have a business yet, they just were they send newsletters or whatever. I mean, I really think in terms of an online business, mine was probably in the first couple hundred businesses, period, in the world, online businesses. I can only think of one other paid digital newsletter when I came out with mine. It was unknown. So I was reaching out to everyone I could find. And I would just and I just start sending emails back and forth just to connect with them because it was lonely. And no one was doing it. And there was no teachers, no trainers. No one was teaching online marketing. Online marketing, online entrepreneurship didn't even exist as an idea. And so I was just reaching out to everyone. So as my success started to grow, and it grew, well, I thought super quick. That first year I did make that $10,000. And then the second year was 70,000. And then the third year was like 100,000. And then like 200,000. And it was just unbelievable success. So my confidence started to grow. I started to hang out with more and more online entrepreneurs, people that had digital businesses. And you become who you hang out with. And so my idea of what was possible just grew and grew and grew, because in those early days, I very much thought like there was me, and then there was all these other people knew how to make money. I had that belief that
Right.
just money
Imposters
comes.
sort of turn them. Yeah.
Yeah, money comes. So money just comes to some people. It's easy for some people. I'm not one of those. Some people have success. I self-sabotage. Like I used to have these beliefs, but gradually I weaned myself from those beliefs. And I came to understand that our beliefs are really our destiny. Our beliefs create our destiny. And now I'll sort of, I probably have never said this in public, but I sort of think of the people that are in business, that have businesses. And I don't want this to sound judgmental, because it's not. For those who are listening and you don't have a business yet, I'm not judging you, but I like to think they're like civilians. It's like there's sort of the way like a warrior going to war would talk about civilians, and they're in the battle, they're in the fight. I think of like the people who have awakened and realize that they can create their own lives, that you are in charge of your destiny. Those are the people that I spend most of my time with these days. And the other folks who haven't quite woken up to that idea yet, they're civilians. And so it's just sort of a joking way I'll have in my head. There's us and them, and them. They're just the people that just they haven't woke up yet to their full potential.
Yeah.
Chris, are people going to feel judged? Did I cross the line here?
No, I don't think so. And I was actually going to say, we in my old company, we would have the whole thing was about building offices and building up entrepreneurs, essentially, right? And it was similar to a franchise style model where you would have someone working from one summer, and then the next summer they would go out and run their own office. And we called that a branch office. And it was students who would do it for like 3 or 4 months. And I remember doing it myself. And, when I became a manager who was doing it full time, a big part of my objective every summer was to build out a number of entrepreneurs. And we would talk about it like this too. We would say, if you run a branch office or a district office, when you go back to school, you just walk and talk differently. You like, I remember myself going through that experience of running my first branch office, going back to my school and being in the classroom, listening to people raise their hand and be like, why does this have to be worth 30%? Can't it be worth less? This test is, it's such a big portion of our market. And I remember thinking to myself, these people need bigger problems. Like they're just at a different, resonance, I think, in terms of what they're considering a big challenge or a big problem, because that whole summer I had dealt with so much more. My capacity had expanded in such a different way that by the end of that summer, being an entrepreneur, you really did feel differently about yourself. Your identity had changed so that the things that might have become really big obstacles for people just became what we call bugs on the windshield, which we just flip the wipers on and move past it, right? Like, no, if you're in a car and a bug hits your windshield, you don't pull over the car and I'm like, oh my God, a bug, right? Like you're not freaking out about the fact there's this little bug on your windshield. Like, but that's how sometimes those problems can feel when you haven't stepped out into that bigger realm of challenges. And so I don't think it's a judgmental thing. I want it to be much more of an inspirational thing that nobody is ready for that stepping out into the bigger world, right? Like, because you weren't ready, right? You just had to out of desperation. And I got kind of pushed into it on my side because I was young and they said, you could do it, you could do it. And I'll just tell you, we can talk about my branch office sometime, but it was a total failure. Like I flopped completely. I was literally like the second worst manager in the entire company and probably should have quit at some point, but I'm not a quitter. So it was one of those things where like I learned so much and the challenges were so heavy through that whole process that when I went back to school became just a breeze. And then when I graduated, running my own office. So like doing those hard things, stepping out into the bigger world, it's not something to be judgmental about if you haven't done it yet, but take this as there is no time in which you'll be ready for it, right? It is just something that once you step out, trusting yourself that you can adapt and overcome that growth process that you undergo in that time period is what makes you prepared for being an entrepreneur.
100%.
So I wanted to change directions here a little bit, but you've obviously started with an army of one, really a solopreneur, and then we talked about hiring Betty as your first employee, right? And then of course Mary, your wife, it being part of the business, and since then now we have a very robust team of many people, and we've created a pretty cool team culture. One of which is that our team, we have this thing called Launch Taco that we talk about when things are really amazing, right? And tacos have become this sort of fun theme from within our team. And I'm just curious, like, where did the taco thing come from? Or is it just you love tacos, or is that just, does that stem from you, or where does that come from?
I do love tacos. I don't know that it came from me. I'm not even sure, but like we have a virtual team and it has grown up. So, first it was just me and then it was just Mary and I and then Betty and we kept it very small. In fact, I kept it way too small. It took too long starting to grow the team, but now we're somewhere between 35 and 40 people on the team. And that's like full-time people. And so, for like events and launches, that will expand like with additional contractors and stuff. But yeah, 40, let's call it 40 full-time people, maybe 38. So I don't know, somewhere in there. But we're completely virtual. We are all over the world, really, not just the US. We're all over the place. And so we communicate primarily, like our primary means of communication is Slack. Let's just call that, primary. We use Slack a lot. We also use Zoom a lot. We have, virtual meetings. There's a lot that happens to get a team that large moving all in the right direction. But one of the things that I don't know how tacos became a theme on the team. I mean, I am all for tacos. I love tacos.
I feel like people all over the world love tacos.
I mean, how
That's
can you
part
not?
of it, right?
Just like how can you like not love tacos? But then, we've had we try to have fun on the team. Like, people are investing a huge chunk of their life energy in this team in helping create my vision out in the world. And I just always want to honor that and remember that. And I want to have a team where people really like being on it. So anytime we can add a little fun, and especially since we're virtual, we're all over the world. So we have all kinds of emojis that we use to celebrate each other. And one of them is we have a launch taco. We also have a taco star, and so you can give people launch tacos. We also have launch squirrels. That's a whole different story.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So tacos are a theme.
Tacos are I keep thinking that maybe for this podcast we can incorporate some fun taco theme into our episodes. We'll have to figure out how that looks. But the idea of like learning some taco tendencies from our guests might be kind of fun. So yeah, tune in for some of the other episodes. We might be doing some interesting stuff that way. Because one thing I noticed coming onto the team, and one of the things that I loved about running my own office back when I was doing that, was that I could create my own themes, create my own tropes, my own, and I think that a successful team always has that that they have their own thing that is sort of internal. It's like, well, for us, it happens to be our love of tacos. Like we actually, I think it's part of our team culture in some ways. And when people come into it, they kind of they laugh about it, but they're also like, oh, I love this. This is great. It's a lot more fun than they were expecting. And also, it's a way that they can kind of, anchor into what the team's about. And it's not just about, again, like hustling and like making money and like, I mean, and your vision of the world is not just about whatever Jeff wants to, it's also about like the impact that our team is having on the people in our community. Because I think that maybe people don't always realize that, we're showing up and you're showing up in so much, in such a big capacity for our community and for the community that you've built over this long period of time. I mean, the stories and the people and the amazing impact that they have. Like you've talked about changing the world. Like I remember doing research when I was applying for working with you. I listened to you on other podcasts. I read what your mission statement was about, and I remember you talking about like, I want to have an impact on the world. I want to change the world through entrepreneurs. And that really resonated with me. And I think that one of the reasons why our team continues to show up so highly, and I think you lead this, is because you show up so much for your community and your people. And I want to honor that, and I want to speak to that. But maybe you could talk a little bit about what it is that you do to build communities. And I know you've run like live events like PLF Live, and like you create these community environments where people show up and they're just so fired up. They're so excited to be there. How do you do that? Like, how does that come out of your personality, being this sort of introverted guy, who was nervous to ask for the sale, right? Like,
Yeah, it's one of the internal mysteries. Is so like when a lot of people, again, if you're just tuning in, you never heard of me before, it probably sounds like I got this huge ego. But no, a lot of people know me for teaching marketing and teaching entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
and until they become immersed in my world, what they don't get is that like my superpower, more than marketing, more than sales, more than entrepreneurship, my superpower for some reason is creating community. I'm really, really good at it. And we have these amazing, we talked about in Plat Plus, we have people 13 years in. They're not, people, if they're not there just to learn from me for 13 years,
Mhm.
38 meetings, 76 days, they've heard enough from me, right? I don't have anything more to teach them.
Yeah.
And, but they're there for that community. And so I'm really good at that. We have our Launch Club is our high-end coaching program. And we've got a lot of people in Launch Club, and a lot of them, the community there is unreal. I think it's unlike anything else in the industry. It's a place where you can really feel like you've come home, where we wrap you in this warm blanket of awesome possibility and connectedness. And so Chris, I wish I knew how I did it. I mean, it's just an instinct that I've got. Or I mean, I've tried to break it down. People ask how I do it, and maybe I've had a couple of people in Plat Plus tell me how they think I've done it, and some of that resonates. But I know, like for me, it's clear that I just have a belief that um, uh, on just a big picture, spiritual, metaphysical level, that um, we're here. We're here for a reason, and I don't. That's about as deep or as specific as I can get. I just think that we're here to create good, and we are creating good. And I believe in the trajectory, the positive upward trajectory of the human kind. And I love humans. And we have our challenges, and we have some challenging times right now, and we have a lot of discord in the world right now. But I'm a fan of humans, and that's where it all starts, is that like we're better together, that we can create amazing things together. I talked about a little bit ago how my mental shift went from being so limited in my thinking to being so much more expansive in my thinking. And I did it by networking and connecting with people. And I think we are better together. So I have continually built communities that I wanted for myself. When I started our Plat Plus Mastermind in 2010, I created it because I had been in one a mastermind after another, and they've been all amazing, and they had all imploded for some reason, or I had outgrown them. A lot of them I just kept growing, and other people didn't, and so I outgrew them. So I'm like, I need to create the perfect mastermind for me, and it was really clear that to do that, I had to create a mastermind that wasn't about me. It was about the group. So I think that's the key primary lesson in creating a community is the community exists to serve the community. It's to serve the members. It doesn't exist to serve the community creator. So I'm super clear when I get in front of that room, I'm leading that room. I'm setting the tone for that room. I'm setting the boundaries for that room. I'm setting the agenda for that room. And I might be the dancing monkey up in front of the room, but it's not about me. So if I get up there and I open with a story, it might be a story of me and my life, but it's a story of the group. And so I think that's the cornerstone for creating communities, understanding it's not about you and letting go of the ego piece, that they came to see me. Maybe they did come to see you. Maybe in this instance, in that first few years, they came to see me. But in my mind, it was they thought they were buying me, but what I'm really giving them is them. And that's way more powerful. And if you look at that group, I mean, people in the first 5 or 6 years, the average growth of people that stayed in that group for the first 5 or 6 years was like 17 times. They grew their business by 17x. So in other words, 17x is going from a $100,000 business to a $1.7 million business. And that's not because I was the greatest coach in front of the room, because I don't do a lot of coaching. What I do is I create that space that creates that possibility.
I think that one of the things that resonated with me too is that you, as people get to know you and get to know more of what you're doing, I think as they listen to this podcast too, it's not going to be just you speaking either. And I think people, what you're talking about in creating a community is sort of what this vision for the podcast really is. This is almost like a peek behind the curtain of some of the masterminds or the communities that you've already been able to create. And so the fact that as people listen, they're going to hear from you. Yes, they're going to hear from me. Yes, as hosts, we're going to talk, but we're really going to be speaking to people who are out there that they may not have heard of, and people from your community that they get a chance to really see the peek behind the curtain of how these people are creating impact in the world, what's working for them, and just having these conversations that I think you love conversation. And when you're in these mastermind environments, that's what people do. I see that they listen to talks, but it's more about what happens after the talks are done, when they're talking around, just even at the bar, or when we're at our fun day or doing something like that. The conversations that come out of that are really what's so powerful. And I think this podcast is going to take a little bit of that energy and bring it out to the public for people to see and feel and hear.
Yeah, if we pull it off, it's a work in progress. If we pull it off, but yeah, very much like in my masterminds, the way I run them is they're not like little seminars. They're not like we've got a speaker coming in and speaking, doing this talk. That we might have someone present for 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and then we'll have an hour-long discussion about that topic. And we're co-creating that amazingness right there in the room. It's not a bunch of speakers, and it's not a bunch of keynotes. And it's the same. My vision, I think our vision for this is it's about conversations, but it's not like, there's a lot of podcasts out there that are interview podcasts where they interview someone each time. And you know what? Some of those are some of my favorite podcasts. There's some great interview podcasts, but I didn't want to create another interview podcast. I could get pretty much any one you want. I could get it, they would come and be on with me because I've got a big network, but I'm more like, I want to bring people on and have conversations and have connections. Those are two of my highest values. And I think there are people that when you tune into future podcasts, they might not be like the biggest names. They very well could be people you've never heard of. Because a lot of the people in my mastermind, you've never heard of. They're just people that are quietly being complete badasses and creating amazing businesses and amazing lives and lifestyles and having an amazing impact in the world. And they're just incredibly good at what they do, but they don't have this big front stage, or their front stage is in some niche that you might not be following. It might be in tennis, or it might be in dog training, or it might be in counseling or guitar playing. So, but because of the connections I've had with them, I know they're incredible, and we're going to bring them on. And we're also going to bring on members of our team as well. So, at least that's the plan. We'll see. We'll see if it resonates. We'll see if anyone cares. We'll see if anyone listens. If you're still listening right now, then I don't know. They should probably leave a review or something.
Yeah, let us know, 5-star or something. Give us a review, or go. I mean, depending where you're listening, Apple Podcast does reviews, Spotify has ratings. Hit subscribe, all those things. But yeah, or even just tell your friends. That's a big way for people to hear about a podcast, is all through word of mouth. When something is good and it resonates, just tell one other person about it. Or if you get value out of it, tell somebody else about it and tell them to check it out, because that helps us a ton too. Yeah,
but we have a vision of we get to hang out with amazing leaders, amazing entrepreneurs, people that are growing big businesses, but often growing them to serve as much as anything. And I just want to, Chris and I'd love to take you inside the world of our team, and show you how this business actually works in the real world, behind the scenes. With all the highs and the lows, because when you step onto this entrepreneur train, there's so many amazing things, but there's also challenges. And I just want to I've always tried to be super real about that. I want to continue to be super real about that. So, and also just most of these folks are dear friends. So, you're going to hopefully have a little fun along the way, because I'm going to be talking to people that I know real well, that we have a real connection with. And so, I don't know, I'm super excited about this.
And yeah, it'll be a little different than your average entrepreneur podcast.
Yep. Well, and there is definitely a piece of we're figuring it out. We're building the plane as we're learning to fly it.
That's right. I mean, one thing we're thinking about is ending off the podcast with the idea of telling people, we hope this inspires you to dare to launch, because I like the way that sounds. And if you like the way that sounds, tune in for the next one. So I think that'll be good. And we do hope that this inspires you to step out of your world and dare to launch as well. On the next episode of Dare to Launch.
It's one of the things that Jeff does really well. He has, and you too, Dan, you guys have everyone in the PLF community identify as a launch person, someone who's going to launch before they buy from you. I'm a launcher. I'm someone who believes in launches. You have them agree to that before they ever buy. So that's something that you guys do phenomenally well. How can we help people self-identify as part of our community before they ever even spend a penny with us? Because we know they're going to become our member in 6 or 8 months, even if they don't sign up in this launch, because they're going to be saving up or for whatever. They're going to self-identify, and they're going to tell other people about us. And even if they never tell another person, and even if they never buy, Facebook looks at their interaction and says, okay, this person can't buy, but we see they're engaging, and we know this other person spends more money than they do, though. Facebook does. And we know that person over there is interested in the same topics that this person is. We're going to make sure this other person on Facebook sees this engagement because we think it's relevant to them. So all of it's really good, even if it doesn't lead to a conversion, because they self-identified with me and part of my community. And it just gives me the goosebumps.